There are moments in life when we feel like we've gone too far, too many mistakes, too many wrong turns, too much distance from who we once believed that we were. And sometimes, though, that feeling turns into shame, a belief that we've wandered so far that there's no way back. But the parable of the prodigal son tells a very different story. You see, it reminds us that no matter how far we wander, the path home is always open. Almost everyone experiences a season of wandering, a time when we chase things that promise fulfillment but leave us feeling empty. Maybe it's success, maybe it's validation, sometimes it's relationships, or trying to prove something to the world. And at first, it can feel exciting, like freedom, but eventually, many people reach a moment where they pause and ask themselves, is this really who I am? And that moment of realization is where the journey back begins. In the parable, a younger son asks his father for his inheritance early. And he leaves home and he spends everything chasing pleasures and independence. But eventually the resources run out and he finds himself in a place of struggle, a place he never imagined he would be. And in that moment, he remembers where he came from and he decides to return home. Not expecting celebration, but simply hoping for acceptance at this point. And what happens next is the heart of the story. The father sees him coming from a distance and runs to meet him with open arms. Let's explore what the story really reveals about our own journey. You see, wandering is part of learning. The younger son had to leave home to discover something, and sometimes people need to experience life on their own terms to truly understand what matters. Wandering isn't always failure. Sometimes it's just part of the awakening. The moment the son decides to return home, everything changes. Not because his circumstances immediately improved, but because his awareness shifted. Transformation begins the moment that you recognize the truth. You see, shame often stops people from returning. When the son returns, he expects judgment. He believes he's no longer worthy, and many people feel the same way. They believe their past defines them, but the story shows something very different. Love doesn't hold your mistakes against you. You see, true love welcomes you back, and the father doesn't wait for explanations. He doesn't demand proof. He simply welcomed his son home. And this is the heart of the parable because it reminds us that grace is not something that we earn, it's something that exists. So let's talk about returning home and how that is an inner journey. Home in this story isn't just a place. It represents returning to the true self, returning to awareness, returning to love, returning to who you are beneath fear and shame. And that journey is always possible. So, how do you apply this story to your own life? Well, first, you need to release the belief that you've gone too far, that no matter what mistakes you've made, growth is still possible. And second, you need to practice self-compassion. You don't need to punish yourself to become better. You need to understand yourself. And third, take the step toward returning, returning to what matters, returning to truth, returning to who you truly are. You see, the parable of the prodigal son reminds us of something powerful. We may wander, we may lose our way, but we are never beyond redemption. So the path back to ourselves, it is always open. And this moment represents the return, the realization that home was never truly lost. It was waiting for us to remember. So if this message resonated with you, if you're learning how to return to your true self after life's detours, make sure that you subscribe to the channel because this journey from wandering to remembering to ascension, we're walking it together, guys. And I'll see you in the next video.